Hello everyone and welcome in part 2 of this tornado tutorial from blendercookie.com. In this second part, I will focus on how to set up the material for our regular tornado and then show you some examples of interactions with the environment. Okay, so first I will move my camera, which is on the first layer, here, and I will display it also on the smoke domain layer. Press M and with shift pressed select the second layer here. So now it is displayed on both layers. Now I will align my camera to this point of view, so I will press Ctrl, Alt and 0 on the numpad. Now pressing G and the middle mouse button, I will move it backward and rotate it a bit with R, okay? Okay, so now let's say I want to render a visual from around this frame here. I can change the start and end frame of the cache, let's say 100 to 101, and I will activate high resolution for the smoke, let's say to 2 or even 3. Should take a really low amount of time to make it, okay? This is not really as expected, really edgy, and maybe we'll need more frames to actually see the motion. So I will click on Free Bake and maybe change the end value to 130. Okay. And I will just lower the high resolution value to go a little faster. Click on Bake again. And as you can see, this is already taking much more time to bake, so I will just speed the video a little. Also, in fact, it just took less than a minute, but now we have our result, and you can already see the motion. But the longer you bake, maybe the better the result will be, as the motion maybe lasts more than 30 frames. Anyway, before we try to render this, we need to add some light. So Shift A, lamp, and choose point light. And I'll keep this quite simple. I will move this lamp a little to the side, as well as in the front. Into the light setting here, I will select Sphere and decrease the distance down to 5. So now this lamp will affect only this region, and I'll just move this again right there. And this is just to be sure that the lamp won't really illuminate the inside of the tornado, but just roughly light the outside. So let's go ahead and duplicate this light. Shift D, X to move it on the X-axis, and highlight the other side. Now I will duplicate this lamp again and move it behind the tornado. Okay, Y-axis and X. Okay, and maybe I will move it a little closer, like this. So now the two lights here are supposed to light the tornado from the outside, while the center will lose even more light diffusion than it is supposed to be. And the light behind is supposed to highlight even more the lower intensity parts on the outside of the tornado. And I will give it a really soft blue tint and increase the power of the light to 5. So this will have a sort of luminescent effect when it catches the light. And to end up with lighting, I will select one of the two side lights and move it around the edge of the domain, like this. And I will leave the shadow and increase the side of the sphere up to 15. And this will be our main light for the scene. Let's just save it. Okay, what if I render now? Well, the only thing you see is actually the domain as a solid, so we'll need to add a new material. I will rename it smoke material. Okay, and here select volume. So if I render this again, I'll still have a big cube, but render like a volume. Feels like we are going somewhere. And this is because of the density. which should be set to 0, as we don't want to render the mesh itself. Now if I render this again, we have nothing left. So in order to see the tornado, we will need a new texture. So add a new texture, and don't forget that a smoke simulation will always be displayed as voxel data, so choose voxel data. So now we have the data to render the smoke. I will rename it smoke texture, okay? And now, really important, you will always have to mention the smoke domain. So go and find the one we accurately named smoke domain, okay? And last thing, you will need to activate the density influence. When rendered, you can already see the tornado. To see this a little better, I will set the background color to be black, okay? And I will also add a plane, like the ground, and scale it up like this, okay? And see what it looks like. So we have some problems here. The plane is displaying the shadow of the smoke domain and not the smoke itself, because actually the lamps are using the domain as a reference. And to counter this, we will need to add a new material to the plane, okay? And I will rename it ground. I will turn off the specular to have maybe the same result than before. And into the shadow options here, I will select receive transparent. Because we have set the density down to 0, the domain object is left transparent and shouldn't display any shadow. Except for the smoke, which is not transparent. I will just move my lights a little up, as they are too close to the ground, I think. Our tornado feels really soft, and also you can see that there are not much details in it, and this is because we are dealing with a fast moving and really thin object, and high resolution is maybe not enough, as we keep having some sharp cuts in the render. So talking about details, the high resolution is supposed to simulate a higher resolution without computing it through a noise method, but sometimes, like now, you can see that this is maybe not enough to get the amount of details you want, or maybe to lose the sharp edges like now. And in this case, you will probably want to increase the resolution when we'll be close enough of the final render. So let's keep focusing on the material for now. Now, to have a heavier result, we will increase the density scale up to 4. Now we have a little more serious result, but as you can see, this is not enough. So we will increase also the scattering, let's say 3.5. So the more scattering there is, the less light will penetrate inside the tornado. And so it looks like we have something a little more solid now. And obviously this will depend on what kind of result you want to get. And what if, for example, I increase the density scale and scattering even more, let's say to 5 each. Now we have something even more serious. But this is maybe too much now, so I will set it back to 4 and 3.5. Also, I could play with the asymmetry, which controls the range between back and forward scattering. So if I increase this to the maximum, you can see that this is becoming all black, and maybe let's say 0.2. And now you can really see how the backlight affects the color, and this can be changed. So let's change the asymmetry back to 0. And if I don't want the light to affect that much the color, for example, if I choose some sort of sand color, which is more solid material and won't really be affected the same way by the light, and I will maybe scale the density down. And what I want to show you is that on some materials you won't have so much influence of the light, so you will have to try and keep the colors through the reflection. And now it don't look really great because this is not really accurate. If I would like something more like sand, I will change the dissolve value as the sand won't dissolve just like the cloud would be, just by changing here, increasing this value. But again, now I really want to concentrate on the regular tornado, so I will leave it as it is. But I will probably have to bake it again and change another force field. So I'm just gonna set it as it was, not to lose the subject. So let's bring back the white color, and by the way I will maybe give it a soft blue and grayish color, okay? So again I will have to change the density as it was, so scattering to 3.5 and density scale to 4, okay? So let's render it again now, and there is a lot of noise you may encounter here. And this can be corrected. You can reduce that noise by changing the step size over there. Let's try a low value, 0.05. So rendering will become much longer, but the noise will disappear. But personally, I think it gives less details, so maybe the correct value is close to the limit with the noisiness. So I'll try 0.150, but again this is a very personal idea, that the noise is in some ways a sort of details, so it really depends on your own feeling. Okay, so now in order to show you what the result could look like, I will set this to a higher resolution, and it may take some time to bake it, so I'll probably pause the video while baking the simulation, as it may take a few times with higher resolutions and a larger amount of time between the start and end frame, so you can see something even closer to the final render. Okay, but before I go on with resolution, I'm just gonna modify a few lighting settings, give a soft yellow tint to this light, okay, and no, leave gray shadow. And for the one in the back, maybe disable the specular, adding I think a little colorized effect. Now we are probably ready to bake for the final render. So we'll move into the physics panel and select the domain object. So first, as you can see, I can deactivate and reactivate the smoke high resolution without losing any information, because sometimes it can really become hard to work with high resolution enabled. Okay, so I will click on free bake and maybe set the start frame to 80. I will also change the resolution up to 64 and leave the eye to 2, no, maybe 3, okay, and now I will click on bake and pause the video. Okay, we are back. It took around 15 minutes to bake, and we are left with a much better result. So the tornado starts to feel alive. Okay, so let's see a render. And so now we have something far more detailed. Again, the highlighted parts are given by the light behind. Basically, the tornado is done, consisting again in a descending circular motion, ending in a small vortex here, and a rising smoke in a different circular motion. Now you can move the cursor in the timeline and try to find the best frame to render, and obviously adjust the lighting to your needs. Let's see a render at this point, and this is maybe the benefits of having many frames at your disposal, so that you can really choose when to render the tornado and when the result is maybe better. And don't forget that you obviously can adjust the lighting to your needs. Let's try something. If I move this down and watch a render, no, this is probably something you don't want to try. And another thing, as this plane receives transparent shadow, maybe I should show you by changing the position of the lamp somewhere good enough. Okay, so, and here the shadow appears, and also the smoke is shaded. Okay, let's see if we can have a better result. Okay. Right now you can really see the shadow of the tornado. So now the regular tornado is over, and maybe it doesn't look really accurate because of the scale, but you have to imagine things around, little houses, trees, or cars at the bottom. And talking about surrounding, it is now time to show you that the force field won't affect only the particles or the smoke, but also objects. And I will let it as it is. Now it's probably your turn to play with. And to go faster, I will use the first layer force field. So I will move back into the first layer. And now we will make some experiment on monkeys. Shift A, monkey. I will move Suzanne on the x-axis. I will also scale it down, S, and I will rotate it on the x-axis also. So R and 53 on the numpad. 53 because I think this is the correct angle for Suzanne to be positioned on the ground. So we would like to see Suzanne and dissolve like a particle system into the tornado. So first, let's add a particle system. Okay. And secondly, we'll add a modifier, explode modifier, which will basically use the motion of the particles to dissolve an object so that random faces will be affected to a particle, and obviously the particles are attracted by the force field, so as the faces of the mesh. And now, if I change the number of particles, this will basically change the number of parts Suzanne will break into. So now you have less and bigger parts. If I want the destruction to go faster, I can change the start and end frame. So let's say start at 50 and the end at 75. So it just takes 25 frames to dissolve Suzanne. And the animation stops right now because of the lifetime of the particles. So let's increase this to 200, so it will last a little longer. And just like any other particle system, you can decrease the gravity weight down to 0. And maybe we will increase the z velocity up to 1.5, so that it's sucked up upward. Also, if you want to add more weight to your part, you can increase the mass value here. So let's try with 3. Okay? And this should give a much larger motion to the particles, as you can see now. And now you can see the difference, as it takes even more time to reach the center. And if you watch closely here, we are supposed to have a ground, and my parts should collide with it. So I will select my plane here, and move it also in the first layer. So M, shift pressed, first layer. And oops, I missed. M, shift pressed, first layer. So now it's okay. And the reason why I missed changing layers is because I guess it's lagging a little, so I can deactivate smoke high resolution to get rid of this for now. Go back into the first layer, and in order for our particles to collide with the plane, activate collision. And by the way, I will move Suzanne up because she's not really at the same level on the ground. Okay, so just move it up on the z-axis. Okay, and now the part should bounce on the ground. So let's see this. Okay, so now it's not really bouncing on the ground because the motion is not about going crazy in every directions. But as you can see, my part collides with the ground, and maybe you should try with another force field setting. So I will move it in the second layer. Okay, so now I will stay in this layer, And I will show you that if you don't want a specific force field to affect your particles, you can still deactivate its weight on the field weights here, so the force to 0. And now my part won't be attracted by the force, so it's still being attracted into the center because of the vortex force field and its inflow value. So it would be wise to recreate a new force field setup, but for now I will keep this one and maybe concentrate on a much more better destruction, because when the explosion happens, each part consists in a flat mesh. Maybe you could give some more depth to it. So let's first smooth our model. Okay, and now in the modifiers panel, I will add a new subdivision surface modifier, so that now it will happen before the explode modifier. And if I don't do this, the exploded part will be subdivided, which will consist in many really smooth and round shards. So the order of the modifiers is really important, because now you can see that my shards are subdivided and smooth, and now this is the original object which is being destroyed, but still according to the faces, and we can correct this by selecting cut edges. So now we have a little more random result, even more natural, as you can see. But what is not very natural is that all the parts keep being flat, and maybe we could add some depth to the model. And this is done by adding a new modifier. So here I will select solidify. Okay, so now you can see that you can add thickness to the model, so it doesn't feel like something completely empty. And as you can see on some parts, it feels more like a solid object. And we can keep going and improve this again. You would like sharper edges, not just round, soft one like this. And this can be done with a new modifier. Add a modifier and edge split here. And now this is really being broken. So as you just saw, this can be achieved with only a few modifiers. You can see the changes really quickly. So this is the original, now subdivided, feeling a little more detailed. Then it breaks into very flat parts. Flatness is corrected by the solidify modifier, and edge split to adjust the angles. And from all of this, Suzanne is breaking into solid parts. So obviously I can also bake this and see what it looks like when rendered. Okay, so I'll move my cursor here, go into the particle settings, cache, and click on bake. So it may take a few seconds, not something really terrible. Okay, and maybe I will render with the smoke simulation, move to the second layer. Okay, and I will find a good frame to render, maybe something like this. Okay, press F12. So as you can see, the particles are also rendered into halos. So to correct this, move into the particle system settings, and into the render options, select the render type to none. But now the flying parts of Suzanne are all black, and this is because they are moving into the domain, and again because the light doesn't go through the domain from both sides, inner and outer. To show you this, I will move this big light inside and this little one outside, and if I render now, as you may see, the big light illuminates only the parts of Suzanne situated inside the domain. Let me show you again. And the same for the light outside. So you have to be very careful when using the smoke domain, and never forget to set up your materials to receive transparent shadows. So let's add a new material to Suzanne. Select Suzanne, click on Add New, and in the shadows option here, select Receive Transparent. Now everything looks okay, and you will probably want to activate Receive Transparent to all your materials in your scene, so that you are sure you have the correct lighting then. Also, there are no other issues concerning the shadow now. So basically, this is one of the ways you can make your objects to interact with the tornado. And before I move on to the last part, let's try a render with the high resolution. Okay. So I don't see anything wrong right now. Lastly, I will show you that the particles and explode modifier are far from being the only way your objects can interact with the tornado. So I will leave Suzanne now into this layer, and we will move on in the first one, where the force fields are. So I will press Shift A and add a new cube, okay? And maybe move this away like this, and scale it down, okay? Maybe a little up. And into the physics panel, we will activate the physics simulation by selecting soft body. And if I press Alt A, the cube will also be a part of the animation. Okay, and to set this up a little better, I will disable soft body goal, really basically allowing the cube to move freely, not attached to its origin. But still, this is really soft now. So I will activate Stiff Quad, so the cube will keep its original shape while being moved away. So now it's not extremely deformed. And maybe I will move this little like this. Removing the pull and push values should make it even more solid, basically removing elasticity. I will set each one to 0.95, and maybe I can lower the mass, as tornadoes are supposed to be very powerful. But still, I don't really know what this object is supposed to be, so it can be cars, houses. So it's really up to you to generate what you want. So I will try something a little different now, using Shift D to duplicate even more objects. And again, everything keeps being attracted inside, because just like Suzanne, the force field just does its job. And just like Suzanne, you can deactivate wait for the force field for any object. Well, I just delete the other ones. Okay. So the result is quite the same, because the vortex inflow also traps the cube around the center. So the best idea would probably be to move it into a new layer and add new force fields specifically for this simulation, because the main purpose of this tutorial was the fact that you can use as many force fields you need until it looks okay. So yes, I could change the mass, the weight, etc. There is probably no way you can get this right with only one set of force fields. So I'm not going to make a new one, and this for many reasons. The first one is because I would probably have to go through the whole body subject, and this tutorial would probably never end, as each object is different, like cars or houses or etc. And with many tries and testing, I'm sure the possibilities are nearly infinite. But it should require a good amount of time for all the settings. And really lastly, I will try a little something in terms of demolition. I will select the cube, tab into edit mode, select the face, press P and separate, so that the face is a different object. So I will do this again and again and again and again till the end. Okay, and now I will regroup everything. Well, no. First, let's just test like this. Okay, so yes, this is just working. Obviously not as it should, but this is probably a good start. So let's decrease the mass and try again. So as you can see, you can just break things this way too. What if it was only one object, Z for wireframe view, B to box select, and Ctrl J for my faces to be grouped into one object? Okay, so this is working as well. And now I think it will lead you to more experiments. So just imagine that instead of faces, these are car parts, doors, etc. You will probably be able to see the car being destroyed by the tornado. I didn't do this myself, but maybe this is something to test. I think I won't go any further than this, because everything is now a matter of things external to the tornado itself, like a good scene with, again, houses, trees, cars, and their own lighting sets. I guess this tutorial is now over. I really hope you learn some new things about the particles, smoke simulation, force fields, etc. So thank you for watching and goodbye.